Today I'll be presenting about the outlook in a doomsday scenario. It's 90 seconds to midnight. According to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, we're at higher risk than ever of destroying the world with our own technology. They use the doomsday clock to represent how close we are to potentially destroying the world. The most recent move was in early 2023, where the hand was adjusted from 100 seconds to 90. This was the first move since early 2020, when the clock was changed from 2 minutes to 100 seconds. People seem to agree that we verge closer and closer to wiping out humanity in a cataclysmic event of our own creation. Since the dawn of the nuclear age in July of 1945, there's been an elevated threat of global annihilation, due no doubt to our own developments. Prior to the creation of the nuclear weapons, there were not any notable concerns, and certainly none at the same scale. The LA Times states, a nuclear conflict involving less than 3% of the world's stockpiles could kill a third of the world's population within 2 years, according to a new international study led by scientists at Rutgers University. A larger nuclear conflict between Russia and the United States could kill 3/4 of the world's population in the same time frame, according to research published Monday by the same source. Nuclear weapons, though, are no longer our only concern. More recently, topics like climate change, overpopulation, and AI takeover have begun to dominate news headlines and join alongside nuclear weapons on people's lists of world-ending concerns. According to the World Wildlife Foundation, humans and wild animals face new challenges for survival because of climate change. More frequent and intense droughts, storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, and warming oceans can directly harm animals, destroy the places they live, and wreak havoc on people's livelihoods and communities. Additionally, 37% of Americans believe that AI developments are more cause for concern than excitement, and only 18 believe they're more exciting than concerning, according to Pew Research Center. There's an alarmingly high amount of concern regarding the potentiality of a doomsday event. We live in a world where a large number of people fear that the end is near. What factors most directly impact this belief? Now for the literature review. The first source I looked at was Growing Up Under the Mushroom Cloud by social work educator Dr. Bert Schachter. Along with the National Association of Social Workers, Schachter researched how children view certain aspects of nuclear war during the height of the Cold War. He asked both Soviet and American children questions such as, do you think a nuclear war between the United States and the USSR will happen in your lifetime, via a survey that he distributed to them. After analyzing the results, Dr. Schachter concluded that both American children and Soviet children were to varying degrees frightened and highly aware of the possibility of nuclear doomsday. Not only does this lend credibility to the fact that children were strongly impacted, but additionally, this form of survey question was the main inspiration behind my method. Specifically, the questions asked in this study and the way they were asked helped me to construct the method that I used to conduct my research. Secondly, another source I used that informed my research was titled, I Am Too Young to Die, Children in the Cold War by Dr. Donna Alpha from St. Lawrence University. She examines the effects of Cold War on children. She used a type of meta-analysis called historiography to conduct her research. Notably, she found that American children and Soviet children as young as age 4 have begun to incorporate words like fallout, Russia, radiation, and H-bomb into their vocabulary. Additionally, she researched the effects of the war on children's psyche. Interestingly enough, this is hypothesized to be a leading cause of the 1960s baby boomer rebellion. This article sets the precedent for serious psychological effects on children of the Cold War, which furthers the idea that those who grew up during this time may have different feelings, emotions, and beliefs regarding a potential doomsday scenario. For this reason, I chose mainly to focus on age during my research. Specifically, I wanted to note the variance in responses between people old enough to remember or have been impacted by the Cold War and those who are not. The final source I used for my research was The Development of Reasoning About Beliefs, Fact, Preference, and Ideology by Laura Hafens. She researches how childhood experience directly impact the person's beliefs. Hafetz and her colleagues conducted 2 experiments in which they demonstrated that age 7 to 10 is roughly when beliefs become less volatile and stay similar to those of adult participants. They concluded that child experiences in fact play a significant part in determining a person's beliefs as an adult. This further lends credibility to the idea that children with the doomsday threat experiences during the Cold War may hold beliefs as adults that were shaped by this experience. One of those beliefs specifically could be their outlook on nuclear war or doomsday as a whole. This was another reason to focus on age as the main background variable. These three sources inspired my method, which was an anonymous survey to collect data and answer my question. The survey format specifically was chosen in line with the first source, and the anonymity was chosen for respondent privacy. The main purpose of the survey was to try and determine if there was a correlation between age and attitude towards a potentially world-ending event. This was done by gathering responses to questions about a person's attitude towards doomsday scenarios, as well as gathering background information at the end of the survey. The first section, or the general survey section, used Likert scale questions such as, I believe that there is a present threat of a doomsday scenario. The Likert scale is a 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Additionally, select all that apply questions such as, which of the following factors do you believe are likely to cause a doomsday scenario? These questions were inspired in me by those used in Source 1, Growing Up Under the Mushroom Cloud. The research paper also pointed towards the survey method used for asking these questions. Both of these factors lend credibility to the method I chose. The background section gathered information such as age, education, race, ethnicity, and gender. These factors will be compared against answers to the survey questions in an attempt to find correlations between different factors and different answers. The background information collected was inspired by sources 2 or 3, which mainly focus on age, but also take into account a variety of other factors. I distributed the survey to students at my school personally, as well as asking teachers and other faculty members to distribute it to their students or students that they're involved with. The survey was also distributed to my parents, their friends, and associates. This allowed me to gather responses from people of varying age ranges, which is the main factor that I analyzed during my research. Following data collection, the results were used to discover if strong correlations between age and a person's attitude towards a doomsday scenario existed. Other background factors were also compared to see if responses varied due to others, including highest level of education. Depicted on this results slide is the percentage of respondents who selected a certain doomsday scenario categorized by age range. As seen in the graphs, the responses are fairly similar across the board. There doesn't appear to be any strong correlation between the different age groups and their responses. This is backed up by the Pearson R values of this graph. Between any of the lines, the lowest R value is 0.624, between ages 13 to 18 and ages 41 to 60. The highest R value was 0.906, between age group 41 to 60 and age group 60 plus. The other 4 R values for the lines are 0.690, between age group 26 to 40 and 41 to 60, 0.765 between 26 to 40 and 60 plus, and 0.816 between age 13 to 18 and age 26 to 40, and 0.836 between ages 13 to 18 and 60 plus. These values do point towards a moderate correlation between age and response. However, the 0.836 was the second highest R value between age group 13 to 18 and 60 plus, directly goes against this trend. Despite this, the R values do suggest a moderate correlation between age and a person's beliefs about a doomsday scenario. This results slide graph depicts the percentage of respondents who selected a certain doomsday scenario categorized by their highest level of education. Simply by looking at the graph, it's apparent that the responses appear to be fairly similar. This is in line with the Pearson R values reported. The lowest value between any two lines was 0.789, being those currently in high school and people with a postgraduate education. The highest was 0.961, between a college graduate and a postgraduate education. The other 4 R values are 0.845, which is a high school student to a college graduate, 0.857, a high school graduate to a college student, or to a college graduate, 0.889, a high school student to a high school graduate, and 0.914, a high school graduate to somebody with a postgraduate education. This points to a very slight correlation, if any, between a level of education and it having an effect on a person's beliefs about a doomsday scenario. The graphs are all too similar to imply that there is any connection. Now for implications. The results depicted previously illustrate an interesting point. The correlation between age and belief was noticeably higher than the correlation between level of education and belief. This is in line with the research discussed in the literature review, which points towards the fact that it was likely that age would have a stronger influence due to factors such as life experience. I did not find any research pointing towards the idea that education would have a strong impact. Rather, it served as a control group or comparison for the age-based research. As far as limitations, I encountered a few while conducting my research. Mainly, I had a small sample size. Because of this, the results found are not indicative of that of the general population. The sample size also led to issues with overall high R values. I believe if a better representation of the general population was surveyed, including a larger respondent pool, the results would be different. Chiefly, I believe that the correlation between age and belief would be stronger due to the higher number of respondents and their varying responses, rather than those conducted from people with similar backgrounds. Another limitation is the specificity of the study. It's not applicable to a general audience, as most people are not interested in the psychological effects of lived experience demonstrated through age impacting a person's belief about a doomsday scenario. Finding existing research on this topic was challenging. However, this high specificity opens the door for plenty of future research. Because of the niche nature of this topic, there is in fact a large availability for future research. Mainly, what other specific life experiences would impact a person's beliefs? Because it was the most highly researched, the biggest factor that I found was that the Cold War would have the largest effect. However, other events are very likely to also demonstrate effects. The Cold War was chosen for this, as it was demonstrated by sources 2 and 3, and notable research has already been done showing that this links to psychological effects on children. The Cold War is a notable event that would have presumably had a large impact on belief. However, other events that could not be measured by age definitely exist. Research to determine what these events are and whether or not they could be represented through age, as the Cold War was, would lend even more credence to this idea. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Owen. I've got a couple of questions for you, and then you can be done. So for the first question, how did the choices you made when designing and executing your method affect your overall process? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when designing my method, I chose to go for the age route, as that was what was most notably researched. So although age isn't what directly affected a respondent's beliefs, you could measure exposure to the Cold War via age. So there's a definitive group of people who are not old enough to experience or remember it, and people who are old enough to experience and remember it have been impacted by it. This guided the choice of my method.
Okay, good. And as a follow-up of that, you talked about your limitations. Can you go over again how your limitations influenced your final understanding, your conclusion?
Yeah, so due to the small sample size and the small variance of background information on the respondents, I don't think it was indicative of a general audience. I think if I were to go back and do the study, a larger focus on a greater audience and something more representative of the general population would yield results more strongly correlating age in a person's beliefs.
Terrific. And then think all the way back to the initial curiosity that sparked your inquiry to begin with. What other curiosities have you developed sort of through the process of this year, and how would you go about exploring them?
Yeah, so I actually started this project because I had a curiosity in nuclear weapons and aerospace engineering. It's a field that I intend to pursue through college. However, through this research, I've also discovered that the field of psychology is very interesting to me, and it's something that I want to continue to study through high school and college. I'll be taking AP psychology and most likely majoring in it, as well as looking to conduct other research, more so leaning towards psychological research rather than things focusing on nuclear weapons and design.
Excellent. Thanks, Owen.